I'll speak not too long because we'll leave some time for questions and answers. So David G. has been talking essentially about one side of the spiritual path, one side of the coin. Those things that hold us back. Moods hold us back. Ego holds us back. Ego is the desire to have things separate, to have ourselves, this sense of self separate from other things. It's the soul which is already in unity, identified with the separate body and separate personality. You know, when you dream at night, I've always found this absolutely fascinating. When you dream at night, obviously that dream is being created out of your own consciousness. There isn't any other thing happening. But you might have 10 characters in a scene in the dream, but only one of them represents you. The other 9 characters are not you. They might be chasing you, they might be helping you, but there's only one character in that dream that represents you, and all the others are not you. See, Master said, in fact, that the reason that we dream is spiritually, God is trying to show us how He created this creation. And so that sense of one part of the whole being you and the rest not you is ego. And as long as there's that separation and even the desire for that separation, then the dream is going to continue. And so Davy was talking about, some of the things that make that dream continue. Moods. So why do moods make the dream continue? Because they're engrossing. They enmesh us. If you go to a movie and the movie is just very flat, hardly anything going on, the hero and heroine and the villain, you can't even tell them apart. They're all just happy, complimenting each other. Who wants to stay in the movie? So the movie makers know that you're not going to stick around. You're not going to purchase a ticket to watch a movie like that. So they create all this drama, all these moods, all these likes and dislikes. And in a movie, Davy was giving you the advice not to have any moods, the advice that whatever comes, accept it with equanimity. What if the hero in a movie, the bad guy is chasing him and shoots at him, he says, "Oh, isn't that clever? He's trying to shoot me. Oh, I accept it. It's all coming from you, Lord." Everybody would be, scratching their head and saying, "This is the stupidest movie I ever saw." But you want the movie to be stupid if you're trying to get out of the theater. It's if the movie is too engrossing, you don't want to leave. Well, if the dream is too engrossing, you don't want to leave. And if you don't want to leave, that means that you want things moody. You want them separated. You want them built around likes and dislikes. And as long as that's going on, that paradigm, then we stay in a body, we stay in creation. And God, it's all God. God is dreaming the dream. But we have, as individuals, we have the choice whether to want to merge back into the dreamer or to stay in the dream. And it isn't presented to us that clearly. We just have the choice to get enmeshed more and more in the world or not to be quite so enmeshed. And so Davy was talking about those things that keep us pulled back and the negative things that keep us in the dream. What are the positive things that help us get out of the dream? Well, first of all, if it's moods and likes and dislikes that keep us in the dream, then pulling away from moods and away from likes and dislikes and away from that energy that gets enmeshed, that will help us get out of the dream. That's a pretty good definition of meditation. To not be caught in something outward, to pull the energy back in. That's our spiritual path. So our meditation practices, in a positive way, we don't have to meditate thinking, oh, this is terrible and I must not do that and I must not, and I don't. Master defined meditation not as anything anti. He defined meditation as deep concentration on God or on one of His aspects. So in meditation, it won't help us to kind of get upset with ourselves. You know, we're trying to concentrate and then we lose our concentration and we get upset with ourselves and we're a little bit moody and angry because we aren't succeeding in meditation. That simply doesn't help. So in Hong Sa, Master didn't say, you know, when we're practicing Hong Sa and the mind drifts, he didn't say, be upset with yourself when the mind drifts. Really get angry. Tell yourself you must never do that again. He never said anything like that. He said, just as soon as you catch the fact that you've drifted, bring it back to Hong Sa. So what he's saying there is as soon as your energy starts to drift outward, bring it back to being inward. The same with the qualities of God. If you're meditating on the light at the spiritual eye, as we often do, especially after the practice of the techniques, try to look into that light, then if the mind drifts away from that, just bring it back as well as you can. Try to go from holding concentration on that light for 5 seconds for one breath. Try to hold it for 2 breaths or longer, and a whole minute, a whole 5 minutes. Master said if we can focus on God or a quality of God completely for an hour, we'll go into samadhi. So it won't help to negate, just keep bringing your mind back to focusing on God or one of the qualities. And that's really the whole of meditation, is just that practice of coming back. And the techniques help withdraw the prana so that the mind is not, the breath is calmer, the mind is calmer, and the prana is more withdrawn, and they all work together so that we are able to concentrate more. But our job is just to keep trying to concentrate. Then in our outer life, so meditation, you know, the formula that Master gave us was meditate morning and evening, in between too if you can, but at least morning and evening, and try to actually contact God at that point, God or one of His qualities, and focus on it, because gradually then that becomes very attractive to the consciousness. And in the state of calmness, you don't want to be restless. You don't want the mind to be restless anymore. So that attracts us in a positive way. So morning and evening, concentrate on God. And then during the day, do your work, do your service. As Devi said, don't whine and complain and say, oh, why do you make me do this, Lord? Just accept what comes, do it, do the best job you can, and try periodically to think of God. There's a beautiful poem of Master's called God, God, God. And he starts out, it really is a kind of a meditation in itself, or an advice on how to live life. From the depths of slumber, as I ascend the spiral stairways of wakefulness, I will whisper God, God, God. So that spiral stairway is both as we wake up in the morning and we come out of sleep, but it's also the long sleep of incarnations, going more and more. And what allows us to go up that spiral staircase? Concentrating on God, God, God. Every morning when I break my fast, I will taste Thee and mentally say, God, God, God. And so when we're eating, when we're doing anything, if we can, try to realize that we're tasting God in the food. We're interacting with God at work. Everything is God. And if we can keep the mind coming back, see, it's almost like a living affirmation that he's suggesting here. Keep pulling the mind positively back to seeing everything, the food, everything is God, God, God. The next stanza, no matter where I go, the spotlight of my mind will ever keep turning on Thee. And in the battle din of activity, that's like work, we're working now. In the battle din of activity, my silent war cry will be God, God, God. So in the battle din of your daily activities, keep the mind coming back to God, God, God. And it goes on. I won't, well, I'll do the next one too. They're all so good. He said, when storms of trials shriek, and when worries howl at me. How often does that happen to us? You know, the difficulties of life, the trials are shrieking and making a big noise and clamor, and we're worried about things, and our mind is just kind of running and running. And when worries howl at me, I will drown their noises, loudly chanting, God, God, God. Anyway, the rest of the poem goes on in the same vein, but if you read that and think about it, it tells you how to lead each phase of the things that happen daily, and each phase of what happens through incarnations. And the answer is always the same at the end of every stanza. God, God, God. And so positively, we try to bring our mind back to God all the time. Now, does that mean that we have to have a mental picture of Master? No. In the battle dim of activity, God will appear as one of His 8 aspects, which is calmness. And so if in the battle din of activity we can remain and attain a state of calmness, we're worshiping God in that. Or peace, we're worshiping God. When worries howl and trials shriek at us, if we can feel love for that situation, those people, love is another quality of God. So when we have one of those, it isn't an attitude, it isn't a mood, it's a bhav. When we have one of those bhavs of God's 8 aspects foremost in our consciousness, then in that very time, we're in the presence of God. So He isn't an abstract figure. He isn't a person. He isn't a murti. He's all of that, but He's also these different ways of relating to the world. And if we can hold on to one of those ways as the method or the keynote of how we're relating to what's happening to us, then we'll be relating to the world as in a godlike way. And if we lose it, as we inevitably will, it's just like Hong saw. Oh, I got upset. I lost my calm. I lost my peace. I lost my love. Let me come back. Let me bring it back. God, God, God. So these teachings are very simple. And it's not that the teaching is hard to do. What's really hard to do is to remember to practice the teachings. It's not hard at all to feel the breath and mentally chant Hong as it comes in and Saw as it goes out. That's not hard. We can teach that technique to someone in 30 seconds. What's hard is to remember to do that and to continue to remember to do that, because the mind drifts away. And so constantly the mind is wanting to drift away because of its habitual restlessness. So our job is to, as soon as we find our peace has drifted away, that we're in a reactive state, that we're beginning to go into a mood, any of that, our job is to bring it back, God, God, God. Bring it back with Hong Saw or technique or whatever. And in the doing of that, we will find that many, many, many of these difficulties and trials that shriek at us simply don't visit anymore. They don't like the movie of our consciousness. It's too dull for them. And so they don't visit, they don't hang around. And they go someplace else where they can find a nice moody person who will go along with their game. And so it's really quite simple and yet not an easy thing to do. So we'll take a few questions, but I think we need at least some air conditioner on. It's starting to get warm again. Okay.
We have a few questions here.
Oh, all right.
By the way, before we answer the first question, we were talking with Dharmaraj and Dharmini in the last few days, and I think what we're going to start doing when we go back for next year, starting in January, we're going to start having a monthly, till we return to India in September, we'll start having a monthly Sunday satsang from America with everyone in India. So
at least the idea is that, say the first Sunday we do this, we'll be interactive with you in Chennai, but all the other centers around India will watch that, but we won't try to interact with each center. Because many of you have already experienced what that's like. Then the next month, we'll do it with Delhi or Gurgaon or Pune or Noida or whatever. So we'll interact with one of the Sangha, but it'll be open and watched by everybody. So now we'll go on to the question.
Okay. The first question is by Manmohini, 6th grade. So she says in her exam she didn't get marked badly, but she gave 100% of what she could. So the result was not as expected or deserved, and it makes her sad and disappointed. So what should her attitude be? This is her question.
to repeat the question.
Okay, this person tried in an exam, did the best they could, and didn't achieve the marks that they hoped to achieve. So what would the proper attitude be? Well, that's a very good question, and it's a complex question, because on the one hand, we don't want to be self-satisfied, even if we've tried our best. So if you didn't get the marks that you wanted, then one of the things to do is to look at why you didn't get the marks. Were you nervous during the exam? Did you not study enough beforehand? Did you not know kind of logically what the questions might be? And so maybe the strategy that you had in taking that exam needs to be adjusted some. So you can't just say, oh, every time I walk out the door I trip. Every time you walk out the door you trip, you have to say, why did I trip? Maybe there's a brick in front of the door, and every time, maybe I ought to move the brick. So first start to look at what you can do in order to improve your performance. But then once you have looked and done as much as you feel that you can do, then Nishkam Karma says that you do your duty, you do the best you can, and then you accept the results. So there was a movie that the actor won the Academy Award, and he was a Soviet spy, but he was in America, and he was very calm about everything. And so the lawyer defending him would say, why aren't you upset about this? And this man kept saying, would it help if I got upset? So after the exam is over, will it help if you get upset? Will it help if you get nervous? No, it won't help. But it will help if you look at, why did I not succeed? What can I change? How can I do better the next time? Because these tests are here in order to help us learn.
I'll just add a few thoughts as well. First of all, on a lighter note, Master in Autobiography of a Yogi gives many examples of exams that he had no way of passing, and then he would find, walking to the exam, he'd find a Sanskrit verse in an empty lot. So, but you can say, oh, well, that's just, chance or amusing stories. But what he was trying to say was, God can help us in any situation. So if you're looking for a strategy to do better, then ask God, help me study, help me see what... I remember when I was a student, and I was a good student, and I got good grades, but honestly, I don't think I was that smart. There were kids in my class that were much smarter than I was, but I kind of intuitively knew what the teacher was going to ask. And so I would know, and that's what I would write. So all that to say is, approach your exams with the thought that God is helping you, God is tutoring you. And then Master said, the season of failure is the best time to sow the seeds of success. So if you failed your test, or I assume you didn't fail, but you just didn't get the marks you wanted, just say, okay, as Jyotish was saying, next time I will do better, but don't draw the conclusion, I'm a failure, I'm stupid. You hear so many stories of young children in school who are actually very bright and smart, but somehow they get labeled as dumb early on, and the teachers don't pay attention to them, and the children tease them, and it twists their whole development. And so don't take it on to yourself, oh, I'm a failure, and just say, next time I will try to do this with God's help. And I will keep trying until I am able to achieve the marks that I want, if it's possible. And if not, I will do it with God in any case.
Okay, other?
Yeah, my next question is, what is more important, being happy or being satisfied?
Being
satisfied. What is more important, being happy or being satisfied? Being happy. You can be satisfied with little effort at all. I don't care about much of anything. I'm pretty satisfied that I answered 2 out of the 100 questions properly. I'm satisfied. So, but ultimately, being happy, and then even beyond being happy, to be working toward being blissful. That's the goal of all life. And so happiness will keep leading us. Master used the example of a carrot in front of a donkey. If you have a donkey and you want to keep it moving, you put a stick on its head and tie a carrot in front of its nose. And the donkey keeps moving, trying to get the carrot, and so then he plods along in the direction you want him to go. So happiness is that carrot, and we plod along. And things outside of ourselves don't give us, we never catch the carrot, like the donkey can't catch it because it's outside. So happiness is inside, and we have to realize that. But nonetheless, happiness is the motivation that keeps us moving. So being happy is more important than being satisfied.
Okay, I'm going to say the opposite.
Uh-oh.
No, not really the opposite. But I ask you the question, the person who asked, what do you mean by satisfied? Because you know, in Patanjali's the yamas and the niyamas, one of the highest virtues is contentment. And what's the difference between contentment and satisfaction? Well, I'm not sure. If satisfaction just means, as Jyotish was saying, putting out the lowest amount of energy and saying it's good enough, I'm satisfied, what's your problem? That's a very American attitude, I must say. But if it's like, oh, I have a simple life. I don't have much, but I am satisfied with what I have. And then if you think of satisfaction in terms of contentment with what is, then happiness and contentment are the same thing.
Right.
To be pleased with whatever comes to you, if it's more, if it's less. You know, just like that wonderful story. I think it's in the book In the Vision of God by Swami Ramdas, either In the Vision or In the Quest of God. But he and a companion were strolling along the banks of the Ganges, just wandering through India, chanting Ram Nam, taking the name of Ram. And then one night they were going to bed, and the mosquitoes started just swarming, and they couldn't. You know, the man, his companion, just couldn't stand it. He couldn't sleep, and he was slapping himself. And he said, "Oh, these mosquitoes are terrible." And Ramdas, who was a great soul, he said, "What is wrong with you, friend? These mosquitoes, they're helping us to stay awake all night so that we can chant Ram Nam." And so he was contented. He was satisfied with whatever was. So it depends how you look at it.
Yeah, it depends on how you define satisfied.
One more question. When faced with difficulty, just by thinking that these are coming from God doesn't help much unless it is coming from the heart and not just intellect. Trying to convince myself in such a way makes me feel insincere to my own self. How can I bridge the gulf between higher aspiration and where I am stationed mentally?
Okay, the person is basically asking, you know, if I just affirm rather than truly accept, if I just affirm that I'm accepting, I feel a little hypocritical about that. Well, Master gave many affirmations. Now, why would we need an affirmation? It's in order to get the mind to think in a positive direction. So, you know, to take an affirmation of Master's, I will go forth. Okay, give the affirmation.
Okay, this is a wonderful affirmation of Master's. I will go forth in perfect faith in the power of omnipresent good to bring me what I need at the time that I need it.
Okay, I will go forth in perfect faith. Who among us is able to go forth in perfect faith? So if we say that and the mind comes in and says, well, I don't have perfect faith, I'm a hypocrite, I think I won't even do any of this. You know, obviously we're moving toward having perfect faith, but an affirmation helps us in that direction. Master said that if you're unhappy, to take your fingers and push the edges of your mouth up so that you smile. And you think, well, yeah, how much more hypocritical can you get than that? But neuroscientists now tell us that if you force the muscles to go into a smile, it affects the mind, and therefore the mind follows along. Master said to slightly draw the finger toward the palm, as you in Hong Saw, as you say Hong, and let it relax away. Why do that? I've had many people come and say, it just is a bother. It disturbs my concentration to do that. Well, Swami explained it. This represents ego, this finger. And by drawing it toward, you tense it a little bit. With Hong, which is the inhalation affirms the ego a little bit, and exhalation relaxes it. When we die, we don't die by taking a big inhalation. We die by exhaling, and then the breath doesn't come in again. So we die by relaxing, and the exhalation is part of that. The relaxing of the finger is also an aspect of that. So there are many things that we say or that we do that we may not even understand. And if the mind comes in and says, well, I'd be a hypocrite in doing those things, better to do them, especially if they come from Master as an affirmation or from Swami as an affirmation, than to not do them because we aren't 100% there. I had an affirmation that I often use, which is, I'm grateful for my life exactly as it is. I am thankful for this day. I welcome every hour. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Now that's an affirmation. I can't say I'm grateful for my life exactly as it is all of the time, but by affirming that, you're accepting what comes, as opposed to saying, well, that'd be hypocritical to say that, so let me be critical of everything that comes. Let me not accept anything. Let me not be grateful. That's my real attitude here. It's like the downward spiral instead of the upward spiral that Master talks about. And so there are many things that we do that we haven't completely realized yet, but help us move in the right direction. And my attitude is that if it comes from Master or a higher source, do it even if you don't understand it. Do it even if you don't agree with it, because they know better than your whim-driven mind.
Okay, I have a couple of thoughts that I'll share on that.
Be satisfied.
First of all, I remember one Swami, we do this chant, I want only Thee, Lord, Thee only Thee. And someone came to Swami and said, I feel like a hypocrite. Same words. I can't say I only want God, Thee only Thee. And Swami laughed and he said, okay, inwardly say, I want to want only Thee, Lord, Thee only Thee. And that's true. So even though you can say, I don't see it all coming from God, but if you say, therefore I quit, then the ego has won. The divisive power of the universe has triumphed. But if you can say, I want to try to feel that everything is coming from God, and I will see if I can do it. That's not hypocritical. You're just making a good effort. And just like with meditation, if you say, oh, I'm a hypocrite because I sit to meditate, but my mind wanders for 98% of the time, that's not being hypocritical. You're just in training. And that there's a difference. Hypocritical is when you're consciously deceiving yourself or others. And then just being not yet perfected in it that's not hypocritical. It's just you're working on it. Just as, if a painter wants to paint and he starts off and it's not very good, he doesn't say, I'm a hypocrite. He just said, I haven't learned my skill yet. And so we haven't learned our life skills yet. That's all. And so then the other point too is Master so much tried to link the teachings of yoga with the scientific approach. His first lecture in America, very first, 1920, Science of Religion. That was yoga. And what is science? It's experiment and experience. And that's what we have to be spiritual scientists. And so if we haven't yet perfected the attitude, doesn't mean that the attitude doesn't work. Once we were giving a class, this was at Ananda's community in Assisi, and it was on how spiritualizing our relationships. And someone asked the question, well, I really would like to find a spiritual life partner, but I can't seem to find that person. And we said, Master has an affirmation for finding your spiritual life companion. And so when we talked about it and practiced it, then this woman from the back of the room yelled out, I tried it doesn't work. And I said, how long did you try it? And she said, 3 weeks. And I said, well, maybe you didn't give it enough time. And then another woman luckily was there. And she said, I practiced this affirmation for a period of years. And then God brought me a life companion. And I knew, and we were very, very happy. We are very, very happy together. So again, it's not hypocritical to fail, but it's a shame not to keep trying.
Okay. Well, we'll take one question from the local audience if someone has one. This would be the last question.
There was this particular saint who was in deep meditation for years, 300, 500 years maybe. And then he was discovered and then gradually brought back to life. Or he was already in life, but
Right.
To awareness,
Right.
let's put it that way. And then after some time, the villagers around him asked him what he had to say about life, what was his realization. And he said, there's nothing special. Birds are flying, babies are being born, and those who are destined to die are passing away. Creation is going on. Everything is perfect. So, I think that is also an interesting aspect. He says that's how God wanted it.
Yeah.
Instead of all the efforts that we are making, perhaps if we had this particular attitude, I don't know how it would be.
It might, but at least in this perfect universe, God has planted in this particular part of this perfect universe the desire to merge with Him. And so I'll just follow that part of His perfection, even though it seems to be striving. But certainly from the broad perspective, you have to say everything is just perfect. But if you're stepping on a nail, it may not seem like perfection, and you may want to lift your foot not to step on the nail. So Master talked about there being a balance between acceptance and self-effort, or acceptance and effort. Ultimately, it is only God doing the whole show. And so ultimately, it's only perfection. But within the swirling aspects of it, there is, at least in the human heart, there is a desire for that mergence with God. And that too is part of the perfect plan. Without that, the whole thing wouldn't work. So the saint is right, but also other viewpoints are also within that, correct?
So I'll just close with a little story. Speaking of stepping on a nail, some years ago, we were Ananda was starting a little retreat in Rhode Island on the east coast of America. We were having, as you all did, a very intense work period. We had an old farmhouse that we were trying to fix up as a little retreat center. And one of the men that was helping was a young man who lived in Boston who had come over from Russia. His name was Dmitri. And so we were all working, and it was all these old boards and nails. And at a certain point, Dmitri stepped on a nail and went into his foot. And it was hurting, and so we all got around him, and Jyotish couldn't help himself. So we got the nail out and cleaned it, but he had to go get a tetanus shot. But so we were there, and Jyotish couldn't help but making a little joke even at that moment. He said, "Let's all pray for Dimitri's soul."
I used to have a lot of puns and be a curse to all the people around me, but I'm largely reformed now, but every once in a while I still slip. Okay. Thank you all, dear friends.
We'll see you in the days ahead.